Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Welcome to this Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. My special guest today is Paul Stoessel. He's the CEO of Cyber Secure Techs, and he's also the leader of the First Sacraments program at St. Theresa Catholic Church in Sugar Land, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Henry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great too. Thank you. It's a wonderful spot to be in these days, and so I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad that we've met. Let's talk, Paul, right off the bat. With our audience is always interested in because it's the Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. What is your faith journey? What's going on with your faith? How did you come to be at this spot that you're in today at St. Teresa Catholic School, at Catholic Church, I should say? And how did that all happen in your faith journey?
Well, I mean, I'm a cradle Catholic. I was born and raised in the church. My father is a retired deacon, so a very strong upbringing in that regard. But I will say that I think like everybody, at some point you really have to take ownership of the faith, and that could happen in your teens, your 20s, or much later in life. And I think for me, it probably really came when I was helping out in catechesis when my oldest was starting to go to the CCE classes, and that's when I really learned, I think, the importance, of course, of passing on the tradition to my children. I now have five children and even a few grandchildren. Um, and realizing how short time really is, and so I guess in a nutshell, my faith story is that I learned to own my faith a little bit later in life, I think, than I would have liked to have, but I have really learned a lot just by teaching the faith to children. Um, and so I'm grateful now to be in a position, not just as a small business owner, but also in my parish to have access to parents and talk to them about uh, internet safety and technology and rolling that out slowly.
Paul, it's very interesting that you're speaking about these two topics because, and this is what I think is going to make it interesting for the audience. You're working with sacraments, so you're teaching children sacramental prep, and so that's the most fundamental, probably among the most important things one could ever do in life, aside from the role of the parents, is to have you and your team, teach, but also the role of the technology, the influence, media, social media, and so on. What's the do you connect those two in your sacramental prep in any way?
I do because particularly in our sacramental preparation, the parents are required to come to six classes out of the year during a year where the children are being prepared for First Holy Communion. And I always take that opportunity, albeit somewhat briefly, but to plant the seeds in their minds about the safe use of technology at the home. I use the analogy of this. Eve gets the I guess the bad rap for having committed the first sin, but if Adam had been guarding the garden as he should have, then Satan never would have been allowed to enter and tempt Eve. And we need to guard the garden, right? The technology is how Satan is getting in. And so I use my expertise in the technology world to help educate parents and empower them on various techniques of safeguarding.
A priest once told me, a really good priest, he said something like this, and it has to be taken in context, but he said the internet is like a sewer pipe into your living room. And so, that's one priest's concept of it. But what do you do in a world where, I suppose a young child at, I don't know, at what age, 13, 14, they might need that cell phone, that device to be able to communicate with the folks while they're waiting at school or to be picked up from a class or something like that. And so, what's the, I'll hit you with that immediate hard question. What is the right answer to that? Do we do that? How do we, you can't shelter from the world, but you have to protect at the same
No,
time.
you're right. So I know parents that'll pull the plug completely and just not have any technology in the house, and really that's just delaying the inevitable. And the better approach, in my opinion, is to introduce technology to your children at an appropriate time. But you have to be parents. You cannot automate parenthood. You cannot just stick a cell phone in your toddler's hands and say, "Here, be entertained while I go fix dinner." I know that my generation, we got sat in front of the TV a lot, and that sort of thing happens. But also, when I was growing up, there was a pay phone on every corner, or I could even go to a neighbor's house and use a phone. And these days, they don't have that available. So I would say that for those that really need to have a mobile phone, a cell phone, you can get prepaid ones that are flip phones that are dumb. You don't have to get smartphones. Uh, Although the case could be made that smartphones are nice because you can have GPS tracking, and with one app you can see where your children are. But no matter which way you go, the communication, building a trust relationship with your children, ensuring that there is openness between the two. You have to be brutally honest with them about the dangers of the technology world, just as you are about stranger danger going down the street. You don't let them just go anywhere on their own either. So you have to do the same thing with technology.
Yeah. Do you, what do you do about, curiosity? Let's say that you're an exemplary family and you do these things that you suggested and you train your children, but there's that curiosity, and so they'll click somewhere that you don't want them to be clicking, and or they could. Uh, I guess that is that inevitable. It seems like it is, but how do you protect against that?
So I'll give you a general answer because this applies to business owners too, right? You have to protect your employees from incidental things as well. And you really, although our people are the greatest assets of any organization or household that needs to be protected, they're also the greatest liability. And that is only because we don't take the time to properly educate them. But automated elements such as having managed routers in place, endpoint protection, web content filtering, these are ways that can help as a safety net. It should be seen as a secondary way of protection. So every household should have that. If you don't have web content filtering on your cell phone data plan or on your home router, then you need to figure out how to get that done. You can email me, and we'll give my information at the end of this here, but I'll be
Sure.
happy to provide that information out there to anybody that's wanting to know.
It sounds like you have a checklist then of some of the best practices that one should have to protect in the first place.
I do. I have a checklist for small businesses. And, when you think about it, any home is a small business because just about every home has an internet router, has a lot of things connected to it. Even a dishwasher can see the internet these days. And all of those things are potentials to be exploited, but not the least of which being a friend comes over to the house, they have a phone that they use a hotspot. You need to know how to detect these ways of circumventing the securities that you have in place. And so, yes, I have a pretty elaborate checklist to do that. Nothing is foolproof. Parenting your children is always a cat and mouse game in some respects, but you cannot just bury your head in the sand and say, "Well, I've done all I could," either. So there's always another thing to look at.
Yes, I like that you said that the parenting part is important, and there are always risks. We try to protect our children from, like you say, the stranger danger and things like that. And so this is yet another example. I know that some parents have said to me over the years that they will, for example, check the device. If they have let's say the child has a smartphone, they will, not censor, but they'll review the sites that phone has been to, and they know the standard ways that in case the child is smart and has figured out a way to delete and to get rid of screenshots and things like that. I guess I'm asking if there's even further scrutiny like that.
Well, see, this is where the trust relationship really has to come into play. If you work on building that trust relationship with your children, where there's this mutual trust where they can come to you for anything, uh, then the need to spot check, they should know that of course, you're always within your rights to do that, but you don't necessarily go doing it without some level of cause. So if you detected something, then you can go looking for it. But I think so long without trying to be, like what to call it, what a helicopter parent, where you're just always there
Yes.
hovering over them. It's all about maintaining openness and communication. And it's not easy to do. And I've tried to do this with all of my children. I think they would tell you that I was okay at it. But it's not, there's no perfect way to do that other than to get involved with each child. One size fits all parenting isn't going to work either. You have to adapt yourself to the personality of each child so that you can coach them and roll out technology. Maybe that a 13-year-old is mature enough for a cell phone, but another 15-year-old is not, and you just have to make that call, and you have to tell them why. You have to explain it to them.
Mhm. Yes, yes. These are good. I can see the wisdom of what you're suggesting here. What do you think, Paul, is coming? I mean, it's not that we're seeking what the next danger is, but what are the threats that might be over the horizon? People talk about AI as if it's something that is to be feared, and in some ways it can be if misused. But what's coming? What would you caution parents about these days?
Well, working with Dr. Kenneth Buckle at Grazia Plena Counseling, which is a Catholic counseling service, they have locations all over the Houston area. He and I have worked together coaching schools with high schools in particular about the dangers of social media. And that really is still the number one single most greatest threat to the well-being, not just of our youth, but also of our adults. It teaches us to have short attention spans. It's an opportunity for cyberbullying to be just abound everywhere. In a study from 2011 to 2021, they found that teenage girls in particular had just a huge spike in depression, and suicidal thoughts and anxiety. Um, and this is something that I think is going to continue to be a great threat. AI just makes that threat even more prevalent. All right. I mean, because we could talk about scams and everything else, and that's probably a different program. But if we're talking about the well-being of the Catholic household in particular, every household that for that matter, it's understanding that social media is really the biggest threat that we have to the well-being of our youth.
And social media, I'm particularly taken with the point you make about the short attention span. I mean, I've seen that closely with various people I know who the focus and the attention gets very, very short. And so the concept of reading a book in its entirety or forming an argument or writing a page or two about something, it's an art. And I know that in certain the classical schools, the Catholic school system, St. Teresa being an example of having a school like that. I think they try to eliminate the use of devices as much as possible, at least in the education system, even though that's a powerful tool in some ways. But I guess you is that part of the answer here, the
Well,
type
it,
of
it certainly
school that
is.
you send.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
certainly is. St. Teresa Catholic School, which that's the school that's joined to my parish. They're one of the few classical curriculum schools out there, at least in our immediate area. And they believe in smart kids and dumb things, right? They do not have smart boards in the classrooms. They do have one smart TV, and it's typically in the library, and the smart elements of it are never really used. Um,
Mhm.
but it's there if the need arises. And I think that when technology, just like really good liturgy, when you don't notice it and it's just happening as a tool rather than something to be pursued in a particular way, then it works better when where it's utilized as a tool rather than something that becomes the central focus. Because a lot of
Sure.
schools will put a tagline out there, we got the latest and greatest technology. But if you look at St. Teresa Catholic School, they're all about the students.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Let's turn for a moment to the business owner. We've mentioned here the danger for children and all of the realities there. But in our businesses, a Catholic person who owns a business or is an employee in a corporation, they will. want to protect that business, protect the assets, scams are out there. What would be some of the basics that you would look for to protect your business?
At minimum, you must have a managed firewall, not the firewall or modem that was given to you by your internet service provider, but you need to have a managed product, and this is going to be one that's going to cost some money a month. It's prescription, it's subscription services. But it includes web content filtering, intrusion prevention, ransomware detection. I apologize if I'm talking too fast on this, but there are many layers of security that goes into a managed firewall, and that effectively is at the edge of your business network. It's the first thing and last thing that data sees as everything transverses through your network. So the second thing is endpoint protection. This is used to be called antivirus, but just like how things have progressed over the years, antivirus is now just one of many layers in an endpoint protection. So this is software that's installed on every workstation, computer, server, that's there. The third thing is to have an automated backup. So you need to have something that backs up your data on site as well as to the cloud. In case your place burns down, your data can be downloaded elsewhere, or you can make quick recoveries that way. Those are the three, that's like the bare minimum. All right. And I would say that getting an annual penetration test through an ethical hacker, which that's one of the things that I do. I do penetration testing. Primarily a consultant. I'm going to come in and break your network and then show you how I did it. All right. That's, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I do things. So, but that is at the bare minimum of what small business it should do.
I'm reminded of I know a fellow in Western Canada who does that for the corporate world, and so he's hired by corporation, just as you are, to break into the system and explain how he did it, and therefore penetrate and point out the weaknesses. So it's an interesting it's interesting that it's come to that point, but I think that's the reality. So Paul, then data breaches, confidentiality, privacy, fake scams or ransomware. I suspect that most businesses are not well protected. Would that be right, or am I falling prey to perhaps a pattern
Yes.
here?
So through the most recent report that was released earlier this year indicates that small businesses now have a much larger target because most small businesses, due to the economy, have not been using they don't have the cash flow to invest in proper security measures. And because of that, they're an easier target. So if I'm a threat actor trying to break into the hospital system here, so well they have all this robust protection, that would be the big ticket item, but I can do small wins all day long with these small businesses, and I'll get a few thousand here, a few thousand there. And these guys, they know how much money your company is worth. They do their research. They typically have infiltrated your network about 6 months before a ransomware attack would actually hit. And they already know that you've got the money and it will be significant. And a lot of businesses cannot recover after they get breached. A lot of them get shut down.
Yeah, I know of at least two universities, colleges where they've paid seven, eight-figure numbers to solve this and to get the data back. So it's a current threat, isn't it? It's a current situation.
It is. And it used to be, it's like, okay, well, I get hit by ransomware, forget it. I'll just wipe my server out and then I'll recover from a backup. But they know where your critical data is. They'll download it and say, well, if you don't pay the ransom, we're going to start putting all your customer information on the dark web. So it's extortion on top of that. So even if you think you're good because you can recover from a backup, you still end up having to pay the ransom if you don't want to lose your company's reputation.
Yeah, yeah,
And
understood.
if the authorities come in to audit your business after an attack and they see that you did not have a managed firewall in place or have active endpoint protection, then that's going to be even worse for your reputation.
Yeah, understood, understood. Is there, let's put it this way. We feel that we're in a surveillance state. Can that be prevented? People go to different service providers, different email providers. There's some Catholic ones you'd know. You don't have to name them exactly, but are there? We're in. Are we in a surveillance state? And how can we prevent our information from being made available to, even I guess you might say legit sources, but we still don't want to have that information out there. Is that possible?
It sounds counterintuitive, but if you actually try to go online and at least claim things, like if you don't use social media, you at least need to go ahead and claim an account in your name so someone else can't spoof it. Uh, and you really, if you're worried about identity theft, then you should sign up for a monitoring service. But to I guess really answer your question, anything that is out there, whether or not you personally put it out there, there's public record information that you can't stop and is still discoverable. So can and will be used against you for the bad guy's benefit. So really, no, there's not any way you can truly prevent that. So our response is to be super vigilant and to check our bank statements, our credit card statements, just to keep tabs on everything. And there are good monitoring tools for your home network as well. So if you don't monitor, you're not you then you're not going to know it until you've been had, and then it might be too late to really come back from it.
In a sense, we could become alarmist about this, and I know that prudential judgment is the answer. As Catholic virtue is the answer here, isn't it? It's be careful, be cautious, know what you're doing, have Paul's checklist, for example, and follow it in a rigorous way so that you're doing your maximum to protect from these incursions and these intrusions. Let's talk just for a moment as we these conversations could go on much longer. We're coming to the natural end of this, but what about, I mean, this whole conversation that we're having, someone could fake this. They could have my image and your image, and they could have us AI generated saying things that we didn't say. What about that?
Yeah, well, the deep fakes, as they're now really called, they're still detectable, particularly on a video side of things, but it's really good. And I think the greater concern right now is cloning voices. I just saw a news story how a CEO got had by about several $1,000s because his secretary was the victim of an AI attack. Someone had cloned the CEO's voice, sounded just like him, and told her to wire this money into an account, and that money is now gone. And so yeah, I mean, it's out there, and we cannot really do a whole lot to hold back the bad guys. It's like holding back the ocean with a broom, I guess. But you're, our own personal vigilance, and and let's not forget prayer. Let's not forget maintaining that central element of virtue in our own lives. We do not need to be paranoid. My father always taught me to not be afraid of things, but don't be afraid of danger, but respect it. And when we do that, then we have a leveler head so that we can more adequately respond.
Sure. And I love what you said about prayer because much of the, if we call it a portal or an entry point, it's of the enemy. It's demonic in some ways. I guess I'm not putting words in your mouth, but would you agree with something like that?
Yeah, no, there's no coincidence in this, and I would say that over the past 100 years, for instance, adult content, which was really, really hard to get and very expensive, is now super free and just a few clicks away. And this is definitely Satan at work. And unless we go back to communicating with our children and have exercised that fervent prayer, we're losing that tug of war. All right. So whenever we pray, we grab the rope and we're starting to pull with the Lord's grace, of course. Um, but if we just bury our heads and we don't do anything about it, we throw our arms up in the air saying, well, this is beyond me. I don't know how I can get involved in my own technology's welfare. Then you're essentially not even grabbing the rope. So yeah, that's where it's at for us.
Yeah, I can see that. Your father would be correct. he would be his admonition to you is to teach you the Catholic virtue of fortitude and courage, the guts to stand up and fight this and to do the right thing and to be prudent. And so it reminds me that it's a in the pursuit of virtue, we have the answer, even though there's technical answers. You have a checklist, you have some services that you provide people, but the answer still lies in having the courage to address these things, doesn't it?
Exactly. I mean, it's so long as you say, I need help and I want to fix this somehow, then we can certainly help you on the right track. But it does take a culture of wanting to affect that change.
Exactly, exactly. Well, so Paul, then there are so many important things that we've talked about in such a brief time today. How do we find you and support your work, both your sacramental preparation work and also your business that helps families and companies and businesses cope with these things? How do we find all of that, and how do we support your work?
Well, two easy ways. I mean, there's my website, my corporate website, which is cybersecuretx.com. And I've got a page that you can contact me through there. But probably the easiest thing is my email address. You can use my parish email, which is paul@sugarlandcatholic.com. So paul@sugarlandcatholic.com. And I would love to come talk to your parish or your school. I would love to, help parents have a better understanding of how they can take a hold of their technology at home. I would love to help your small business out there, or even your enterprise business if you're listening. If you need a third party auditor or assessor, that's the kind of always getting another set of eyes on there uh, to help empower CEOs and parents alike in protecting those that they are entrusted with.
That's great, Paul. Thank you for that. Your work really is not limited to any geographic area. You can help people basically anywhere in the
Yeah,
world, I suspect. The answer.
I
So,
can.
yeah,
So long as there's an internet connection, I can be pretty useful from just about
yeah.
anywhere. But I also like to do my talks in person whenever possible.
Yes, that's an important thing. We'll add all this information to the show notes, but you are available then to speak to parish groups, and this is an important thing because you can bring the message in person to people, and I think that's wonderful and appreciate it. So,
Yes, I actually give workshops on how to do something. So when you leave, you have action items and you actually feel like you can do something when you get back to your home or business.
and so if someone emails Paul at sugarlandcatholic.com, they can get your checklist. They can request your checklist and also learn more about
Yep,
your
I have a
services.
checklist with a self-assessment guide, and then of course you can ask me anything you want, and I don't ever charge for things like that. Those are things that I like to get out there and have everybody use.
That's wonderful. Well, thanks again, Paul. God bless you and your work and your family. And, may you have every success in helping us with all of these topics. So thanks again for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless.